You're listening to the Begin Within Health Show with Nate Slager. For more, go to beginwithin.fit/podcast, or to enroll right now in our flagship coaching program, go to beginwithin.fit/coaching. I am excited to talk with my guest this week. Her name is Esther Avant, and she is an industry veteran, a fitness industry veteran. She's got over 18 years of experience in fitness, nutrition, and wellness-related roles. She is a sports nutritionist, a personal trainer, a wellness coach. She owns a company called EA Coaching, which has provided the full spectrum of health and lifestyle coaching since 2015. Her mission is to help women to be healthy, happy, confident, and get the most out of their lives. How does that sound? Sounds pretty great, doesn't it? She knows what it takes to make it happen. She knows how to coach individuals to make it happen. And she's going to present us with something very, very interesting. And that is to take a good look at our relationship with ourselves. We have talked about that so many times here on the show before, how important our relationship with ourselves is. In fact, it's one of the pillars that I talk about a ton in our program. But she has a very unique spin on this whole concept of how come we know what we should be doing, but we aren't doing it. Super interesting. So listen as we talk about the importance of starting small and building trust. Listen as we talk about the importance of celebrating every win. And a third thing for you to listen for, the need to shift focus beyond just short-term results into long-range, long-term success and what it's going to take. Here's my interview with Esther Avant.
I think oftentimes people say, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it, as almost this like dead end. It's like, well, just it is what it is. I'm just not doing it. And it's just something to get curious about and figure out, well, why am I not doing it? Because once I explore that, then I can start solving for it. What I've seen is that most people tend to blame a character flaw. It's, I must just be lacking willpower. I don't have the discipline. Maybe I'm not motivated enough. Maybe I'm just a lazy person and I don't actually care. We tend to make it personal, which feels terrible. So then, of course, we sort of resign ourselves to, well, if I'm just lazy and unmotivated and undisciplined, that's not going to change. So I should probably stop trying. And that's not it at all. I have talked to truly hundreds, if not thousands of people who have almost all told me some variation of this. I know what to do, I'm just not doing it. So collectively, if everybody is feeling this way, it's not just you. There's not something wrong with you. So that's where we need to start asking different questions and looking for evidence that what we've been telling ourselves is not true. So if your default is, I'm just not motivated or I'm not disciplined, look for other areas of your life where you are taking action despite not feeling motivated, despite not feeling disciplined. You probably have a pretty decent track record of attendance at your job. You probably pick your kids up every single day you say you're going to. You probably make dinner even when you don't feel like it. There are plenty of things that you do that are evidence that you are not, in fact, lazy and undisciplined and unmotivated. So that's out. We know that's not the answer. So then it becomes solving for what is actually going on. This requires a little bit of introspection, self-awareness, which is where having an outside perspective can be really helpful because it's hard to develop awareness without awareness. So you're in kind of this catch-22, but really most of the time, it's that you're trying to do too much at once. You are setting these kind of unrealistic expectations that you're going to effortlessly be able to do all the things simultaneously. And then when you can't or you don't, you fall apart because again, you're going back to this personal shortcoming. So most of the time, it's solving for how do I set smaller and more realistic goals that I can use to build momentum, get some motivation, prove to myself that I can do these things, and then start doing more. And it requires just this ongoing reflection to figure out what did I say I was going to do this week? Did I do it? Yes, let's celebrate it. No, what happened? And not letting it just be this, oh, yeah, I dropped the ball again, but recognizing that every time you fall short of what you said, you're chipping away at your reputation with yourself. You start training yourself that it doesn't really matter what you say you're going to do because you're not going to do it anyway. So you really want to start with those goals that almost feel too small, that you feel like that's not going to make it, that's not going to help me lose weight. That's not going to get me that fitter. In the beginning, it's not about that. It's about following through and doing it because you said you would. And then once you have more of that foundation, then you can ramp it up to the point that you're actually going to see the results from it.
Got it. I like that. I like that perspective. I haven't heard that before. I mean, I've definitely heard, we're casting a vote for our identity, atomic habits, James Clear, when we take a certain action. But the idea of starting small because your first order of business is to start to trust yourself that you're actually going to follow through on what you say you're going to do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you feel like is that fair to say that that should be sort of priority number one when we're trying to change our lifestyle is start to develop a better rapport with ourselves, a better reputation of actually following through?
I think so. If you think about it in terms of other relationships that you have, you wouldn't continue to be close friends with somebody who was unreliable. You wouldn't ask the same friend to pick you up at the airport if they ghosted you the last time. You know what it takes to be a a good person and a good friend in your kind of outward relationships. And I think we're never really taught it when it comes to our relationship with ourselves. So yeah, I think priority number one is to repair that. And you rebuild trust the same way you would with another person. You have to forgive the past. You can't keep beating yourself up about it. And you have to allow yourself the opportunity to prove yourself trustworthy. So you can't keep shying away from anything where you could potentially let yourself down because you're also shying away from opportunities to show up for yourself. So that's why starting small is so important is it doesn't even matter what it is. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water before you get out of bed. Maybe it's eating one vegetable. Maybe it's taking a 5 minute stretch break. It doesn't matter what the thing is. It matters that you feel confident that you can do it and that no matter how small it is, or no matter how inconvenient it is, or how much you don't want to, you do it anyway for the sole purpose of following through and doing what you said you'd do. And that's what I've seen in the most successful clients is, they're the ones who are in the hotel hallway getting their last 500 steps to hit their step goal, not because they're obsessed with the step count themselves. That's neither here nor there. They're doing it because they said they would, and it feels good to uphold that. And then that is what spills over into every other area of your life when you realize, yeah, I can count on myself. And what can I do with that?
Nice. I love the idea of this is the same as a relationship with someone else. Um, Especially when it comes to building trust. And you got me thinking, like, isn't that one of our top questions when we meet somebody is not who are they saying they are because we're used to people putting their best foot forward, etc. But like, are they actually the person that they say they are, or are they a hypocrite, right? Are they, we're
Yeah.
kind of looking for evidence either way. So, and I guess as now that I'm thinking about it, you could tell me if I'm wrong. Is that process maybe even more intense with ourselves? That idea of like, I'm looking for evidence that I'm not going to follow through, that I can distrust myself. I think
I
maybe
think
then it
so.
comes back to where you started of then I don't have to do anything because I'm not trustworthy.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think it does kind of become this escape hatch. And what's really interesting is that our brains want to prove us right. So this is, very cliche to say, but like whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't want to feel like a hypocrite. So if you are telling yourself it's as good as done, I can count on myself, your brain is naturally going to look to back that up. On the flip side, if you are already telling yourself, it doesn't matter, I never do it anyway, or this is impossible, or I can't, or it's not for me, then yeah, that evidence is going to pile up also. The evidence for both is there. It's up to you to decide, where do I want to shine my spotlight, and to recognize that because they both exist, it's not like we're trying to eliminate the negative. We're not trying to, pretend that we're somebody we're not, but that we can, sort of adjust the volume on these things. It's like everybody has self-doubt, everybody has those moments of negativity, but to recognize that that doesn't need to be the loudest soundtrack in your head, that you can just sort of say like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, and you can sort of reframe and find an alternative perspective to help yourself realize that it's always been there. You just haven't been thinking about it.
It's like that. You got me. I'm caught taking a ton of notes here already. I love
Love
it.
it.
That's great. Um, I'm curious, and you could tell me if I'm jumping maybe too far ahead. As as you mentioned, one of the best ways to start to build trust is small. Focus on very small actions, so that we can begin to trust that we're going to follow through. Um, are there other things that help with that, like outside of just making it tiny? Are there other things that you've found that will get me to follow through outside of just making it small?
Great question. The first thing that comes to mind is having, well, several things come to
Yeah.
mind. Celebrating those small wins. We tend to take the very kind of, well, once I reach the end, that's when I'll celebrate. And it's like you're gonna have a lot more enjoyment of the process if you recognize that every step you take is a win. So not telling yourself it's too small to matter, but recognizing the value that it has as an individual action. Celebrating that, having some form of documentation. I have a habit tracker that you guys are welcome to download. We can talk about that later, but some sort of tangible thing where you can see, am I doing the things that I said I was going to do? So, putting a sticker on the calendar on your refrigerator, something like that, where you can look at your consistency and you can see at a glance, am I doing better than I realized? Are there patterns in my consistency that I can work on? Having something that you can actually visualize is really important. Finding like-minded people and having community, it can feel really lonely when you're trying to change things, especially when the people around you aren't, or if they're doing it in a different way and you feel like your way maybe isn't as good, or you're just kind of, second guessing everything. Surrounding yourself with other people who support you and who get it and want to see you succeed helps a ton, because then you feel less like a black sheep and more just like, okay, this is the thing that people do. And if I can see other people being successful at it, then there's no reason that I can't be also. So I think those are some of the things that can help with doing the small things and not talking yourself out of them because they seem so inconsequential.
Nice. So celebrate some form of documentation on our process, and then having a community, having others supporting us. And I think overarching is there's there's nothing that's too small to matter in this process. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's really what it is I do a lot of reading on, personal development and motivation and things like that. And a lot of people struggle with intrinsic motivation, or feeling like they do the stuff if no one else is checking, or making sure that they do. And one of the key components to building intrinsic motivation is believing that that you can impact the results, that you're not just kind of going through life hoping for the best, that your actions do have an impact on the outcome, and that those outcomes are built from the small individual actions. Like, you need to see that those small choices that you make do add up and do make a difference. But because if you're telling yourself, this doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, you're doing none of the things. And then it doesn't work. But if you recognize that, sure, individually, me drinking a glass of water in the morning is not going to drastically change my health in and of itself. But I see the value in doing it. I see the role that it's playing in preparing me to do more, in helping me build a foundation that then is going to support more changes on top of that without feeling overwhelming and at risk of kind of toppling over.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I guess the opposite would be, and I'm having I remember the studies they did on little, I think it was a little mouse or something, and they just learned like once you, if I can't if I can't do anything to fix this, then whatever. I give up trying, even though I'm in a very painful or uncomfortable circumstance, right? Like learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness, right? Yeah, yeah. Then they're in a position where they actually could, escape or find food or whatever the thing is, and they don't even try. And that is such a scary thought to be doing the human version of that, where you just feel like nothing you do matters. And I guess if you listeners have one takeaway from today, I hope it's that what you do does matter, and that there's always something you can do, that you're never helpless and you're never hopeless.
Nice. I think that's an awesome message. I gotta chill as you're saying that. Yeah. I think that's great for all of us to keep in mind, whatever it is that we're our next reach is, our next goal, like wherever we're headed, like what you're doing now today, what you do in pursuit of that does matter, even if today we're not going to reach the goal, but we're going to do what we can to work toward it. Absolutely. That's awesome. Very cool. I didn't expect that we were going to go there today, Esther. Learned
Funny how these things happen.
helplessness. That's awesome. I love it. Good. Um, and I was thinking too, as you were talking about, just briefly, you touched on, the individuals that you're helping, people that you're working with, that maybe for us coaches, one of the most valuable things that we do on a regular basis is remind people that nothing's too small to matter. Like this little step, even though you're not feeling like it's that big of a deal, I'm gonna I'm going to tell you, I'm going to remind you that that is a big deal. Do you agree? As coaches, that's what we do a lot of, and that's what we need
Absolutely.
to do.
I think one of the most important things we do is reflect to our clients a more productive way of thinking and feeling and believing. I think at its core, it's not just a reminder that, this small action matters. It's a reminder that you matter and I believe in you. Because what I see so often is going back to the reputation with yourself is like the more you erode that, the less belief you have in yourself that things can be different. And I think one of the most important things that a good coach can do is reflect belief to their client. And I always tell people that, from the jump, the first time I talk to someone is I believe that you can reach this goal. I believe that you are a good person. I know that I can help you. And I think that allowing someone to borrow your belief in them is one of the most valuable things you can ever do. And I've experienced it, even not in a coach client relationship, just in just in life, when you say something to someone and they don't laugh at you and they don't make you feel like it's impossible, when they just sort of very matter of fact, they're like, yeah, of course you can do that. It's so interesting how much easier it is for us to believe in other people than it is in ourselves. And I think that's why it's so important to have the right people around you. Because if you have even one person just consistently telling you enough times that they believe in you, it is very hard it's very hard to not start to believe it yourself. And especially when that person is also reflecting to you the evidence that they see of, did you notice this? Have you realized that? We just tend to gloss over our wins and, explode our, losses or our learning experiences. And when somebody can help you look at your circumstances in a more productive and positive light, you start to develop that skill yourself and you start to get those glimmers of, you know what, maybe I can. And then as you keep showing up for yourself, it gets stronger and stronger and more consistent until you realize I have my own belief in myself. I still appreciate yours, but also I know that it's true. I can. And that is when I just think it's, when somebody realizes that their success is inevitable, they've just like unlocked this new level and you're like, go do the things because you can.
you tell us a little bit about your area of expertise, who you love helping, and a little bit of how you got to do that? Now that we've gone on this psychology journey here, tell us about you. Tell us about what it is that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, the psychology of behavior change is my favorite thing to talk about. I think that's the most overlooked component of this process, of any process, is the what to do is usually pretty straightforward, as everybody is pretty aware. It's the why I'm not doing it that is more interesting and more important. So who I work with now and what I do now has evolved over the last 20 years that I've been doing this. And my ideal client is someone who kind of reminds me of my mom, who struggled with her own weight issues and was just such a good person. And because I've worked in so many different aspects of the industry, commercial fitness and corporate wellness and all sorts of things, I've seen a lot of coaching. And I always just sort of put myself in my mom's shoes and thought, would this type of coaching be what she needed? Did she want somebody who was really militant or would, kind of beat her down or make her feel bad if she wasn't perfect? And it really shaped how I interacted with clients because I want to treat all of them like a mother or a sister or a daughter, or, whatever relationship would make sense. And there's just so much more to a person than their weight loss goal. And there's so much more to achieving that goal than just what do I do for workouts? What should I be eating? So what I do now is sort of the whole spectrum of, yeah, of course that stuff does matter. So we are going to get you into a good exercise routine. We are going to help you eat a more nutritious diet, all those things. But we're going to do a lot of work around why it's feeling hard and how we can approach this in a way that actually feels sustainable long term. A lot of people are so focused on the short term and how long is it going to take, how fast can I get there, that they're completely unprepared when they do. And I think the most important thing we can help people with is approaching weight loss in a way that prepares them for maintenance. And that often requires a lot more introspection, personal development, a lot more lifestyle work than people realize.
I think we have if we don't have an obesity epidemic, we have um an epidemic of people getting results and then going back to where they were before or worse, right?
Right.
How much are we sustaining what we created in terms of those results? So I think that's awesome. I think that's a great focus that you have. What's I guess is that something as you approach that right away with them? Is it well, maybe a better question would be how does that show up initially in your approach, versus maybe how you would have done it 20 years ago, um, that you're helping them focus on the maintenance right off the bat.
Yeah, it's something we talk about, I talk about in my content, I talk about on my podcast, I talk about on the consult, right from the jump, is we need to have buy-in that the way you've been approaching it thus far hasn't actually worked. A lot of people will say, well, Weight Watchers worked for me the last 3 times I did it, so I'm thinking about going back to that. And it's like, well, first we need to address the fact that if you need to go back, it didn't actually serve the purpose. If, is the goal to lose the weight or is the goal to keep the weight off? So we got to start there. And that usually then can lead to a pretty productive conversation on, well, what needs to be different then? So, sure, you could go back and maybe you will be successful this time, but how will you need to approach it differently in order to get a better and a longer term outcome? And that's why I think having this comprehensive approach is so powerful because we can say, yeah, of course, we'll help you with the food, we'll help you with the exercise. And also, as that stuff is coming up for you, we're going to talk through how, where it's feeling hard, why you're not being consistent, all of that stuff. So I think, as a lot of coaches experience, it's kind of this combination of giving people what they want and what they think they need, and then being able to offer them what they actually need. And they sort of come around to that. But you can't sell people right off the bat on, okay, we're gonna do a lot of mental work and eventually you'll get to weight loss. Like that's not people come and just like, tell me how to lose weight. So you gotta give people that. And then once you've kind of started the process, we talk about I call it the tip of the iceberg stuff, the exercise and nutrition stuff. We talk about it early on so that then in those first, few weeks, we can start addressing like, okay, how is it going? And then once you're like, well, I didn't do this, I'm having trouble with that, then we can dive into, kind of the real work.
Nice. It's awesome. And I have to imagine the clients you're working with, knowing that that's your perspective, that you have all the bases covered, just must give them so much confidence that when the challenges come, they're going to be having somebody in their corner that is prepared for those challenges, prepared to help them
That's
through them.
exactly it. I think, people are always thinking like, oh, I need to wait for the right time. I need, you don't. The time that is most useful to get help is when things are hard, because if you can make progress then, think about how much easier it'll be when life is easy. So, yeah, a lot of it is helping people navigate the unexpected, because that's what you really need to master in order to be successful on your own. You can't predict what life is going to have in store for you, but you can develop the mental side of this. You can develop the confidence and the growth mindset to know whatever does happen in the future, I can figure it out.
Nice. That's awesome. You mentioned the habit tracker earlier. Could you tell us about that and how people can get their hands on it?
Yeah, so essentially what it is a glorified, sticker chart for grown-ups, which again, I find to be very effective. I use it for myself whenever there's a new habit I'm trying to work on, is I want the satisfaction of, checking the box. And I want to be able to see, am I actually doing as well as I think I am? Because it's very easy not to. So it's based on the what I call big rock habits, the ones that generate the majority of your results and allow you to get better results without feeling overwhelmed. You don't have to start in any particular place. You can do, I recommend doing kind of like a diagnostic to start, where you just take a week and you're not actively trying to improve any of these areas. You're just trying to get a lay of the land. What am I already doing well that I can just like leave well enough alone and put it on autopilot? And then where are my opportunities? And then just gradually start improving those. So that is available at estheravant.com/habits. And you're welcome to download it and use it for yourself.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Esther Avant. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your work, for being willing to share with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you have it. Great interview, right? I absolutely love that conversation. It challenged some of my thinking on my own relationship with myself. And I'm sure that it did the same for you, because I think for all of us, there are areas of our lives that we are not showing up the way that we would like to be. We're not doing, in some area, we're not doing what we know we should be doing. And if it's health and fitness, then you're in the right place, because that is a context that we were talking about today. I want to invite you to jump over to Esther's website, esteravant.com, ESTERAVANT.com/habits, and get that habit tracker that she mentioned. Go ahead and grab that thing, and you can start getting to work on the wonderful process of becoming a better version of yourself by doing exactly what we talked about in the interview, and that is taking small, realistic steps, committing to doing something, and then following through and doing it because you said so. I think it's so important that we take a moment before we move on, before we close up the show, before you take off to your next podcast or to your workout or wherever it is that you're headed next. Take a moment, just slow down and think about what we talked about when it comes to your relationship with yourself. Really take a moment to think about it. Think about it in the context of what we were talking about. And that is comparing your relationship with yourself and the way you deal with yourself to the ways that you handle relationships with other people. I think that is just the most beautiful gem that I'm taking with me from what Esther shared with us. That is to think about my relationship with myself in terms of how it connects, how it's reflected in my relationships with other people. And in particular, we talked about building trust. So the question is for us each to ask ourselves, am I dealing with myself in a trustworthy way when it applies to health and fitness, the decisions that I need to make in order to become the healthy version of myself that I know I'm capable of being? And I hear this so much, and Esther obviously has heard it too. In our careers, I know what to do, I know what to do, I know what to do. And I think so often fitness is failing people because we're trying, and I say we, fitness, the fitness industry is trying over and over and over again to try to educate people on what they should be doing. And people know that. You know that. We all know that. We know what we should be doing. The thing is, we aren't doing it. And so we need to go deeper. We need to figure that out. And Esther gave us such a beautiful framework to do that in thinking about how we deal with ourselves as compared to how we deal with other people. Am I dealing with myself in a trustworthy way? How can I move forward and really start working on trusting myself, that I am going to follow through when I say I'm going to do something, that I am absolutely confident that when I set out to do something, I commit to doing something, that it is a 100% commitment. And it's not just I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try to eat healthier. I'm going to try to exercise regularly. We're not just trying. We are committing to doing it, and we are trusting ourselves. We are confident in ourselves that we are going to show up, that we are going to follow through, that we're going to do what we said we are going to do. You know, the interesting thing is other relationships, if someone breaks our trust over and over and over again, we have an option to move on. But with ourselves, we don't. So we have really two options. I think as I was thinking about this conversation, we have two options. We have the option to just stay the same. Whatever level of trust or distrust that we have with ourselves, we could just keep it the same. And more than likely, it's going to get worse if we're not intentional about it. If we decide we're going to keep it the same, it's probably going to get worse. The distrust is going to grow and grow and grow. That's the way things go. Or we can decide to do something about it. We can decide to start building trust, stronger trust with ourselves, starting today. And that is going to be essential in us continuing to follow through and do the things that we know we should be doing. So I think for today, two options for action steps. Of course, get over to that link that Esther shared with us. Get that habit tracker, estheravant.com/habits. But then also slow down. Take a moment, and I want to invite you, just as an action step, think about the relationship you have with yourself. Think about the level of trust you have with yourself. Just do that. That's it. That's the action step. Just take a few moments and think about it. And if you're ready to do something about it, then take action. Take action. Do the other things that we talked about in the interview today. Thank you, Esther, for being here with us. It was so much fun to have a conversation with another very experienced member of the health and fitness industry. I appreciated it so much. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Thanks for being here, for supporting the show, for helping to keep this podcast in the top 10% of all podcasts on planet Earth. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you as well for rating and reviewing the show and sharing it with someone that you care about. Maybe you've got somebody that you motivate one another when it comes to fitness. You encourage one another. Hey, let's give it a try. Let's try this, whatever it is, this workout plan, this diet, whatever. You've got that person that you know that is your workout buddy. This would be a great episode to share with them and start to build a community together of individuals who are going to hold each other accountable, help one another follow through, help to build some trust, stronger trust with yourself. Thanks again. That's it for me today. Keep taking good care of yourself. Talk with you soon.